Hi, everyone. Good evening. You're welcome to the ARTFLUENCE Human Rights Festival. And the panel is reflecting on performing gender and sexuality. This panel and this festival was brought to you by the University of KwaZulu-Natal Center for Creative Arts, Embassy of the Netherlands, a National Institute for the Humanities and Social Science, Ahmed Kathra, the foundation, and Hear My Voice. With me in the house, very incredible persons, performers, artists, academics from Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and the Netherlands. And we're taking turns to introduce themselves. Please let's have Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm here in Rotterdam. I'm a composer and performing artist. And I originally was born in England, but I've lived here 7 or 8 years now. And I'm super excited to be here with you all, honestly. Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Albert?
Hi everyone, my name is Albert Ibokwe Khoza. I am from Johannesburg. I am a performance artist, actor, dancer, choreographer. The list goes on. I'm quite excited to be here and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Albert. Franceska?
Hello everyone, my name is Franceska. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a track performing artist and I'm so glad to be here finally. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Franceska. Ayo?
Hi everyone, my name is Ayo Sohumo. I am Nigerian, based in South Africa at the Center for Human Rights. I'm an academic researcher, I'm a writer, and I'm also a project manager on advocacy projects around LGBTIQ+ issues in Africa. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ayo. MoMo, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is MoMo Motsuanyane. I'm an actor, director, playwright, a singer, and a part-time lecturer, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much, MoMo. My name is David Ikbo. I'm a Nigerian lawyer and storyteller. I presently study at the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria. So we'll get right to it. The theme on reflecting on performing gender and sexuality. We have a very multinational and multidisciplinary panel. I'll be speaking to our contexts. You know, it's beyond just one country and it's beyond just one continent. We're going to begin with the first question. You know, we all came from somewhere, something, you know, what and who conspired your birth, your craft, what brought you into life, what brought this person you are today and the work that you do, what made all that happen. We're going to begin with Lisa.
Yeah, so I guess for me, a lot of my songs are about emotional pain or making space to express different kinds of emotional pain. And I discovered myself. I used to call this my alter ego. Now I can say myself. I discovered myself, during a sort of quite dark or painful period of my life. And I was also quite broke, and I went shopping at a market and I bought this hair that I'm wearing now for £3 in Birmingham in England. And I don't really know exactly why I bought this, but then I made a picture of myself wearing it and started to write songs and started to feel I was able to write songs, which I hadn't really done before. I'd only written music without any words. And then later, somebody asked me to perform at an event which celebrated women in contemporary music only a few weeks later. And I was introduced to Bobo Couture, who was the guy who made a lot of my clothes for many years. And so I was sort of thrown into the queer scene actually from having been completely outside, all in the space of 1 week. But I feel like looking back, it's definitely something that's always been there. But I really didn't know about that. I didn't know that guys were allowed to wear floaty clothes. I didn't know that it was okay to cry in the middle of your performance. I mean, just, yeah, some kind of expression, awakening of emotional expression in me.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, you speak so much of finding yourself and the embrace of the community and the opportunities to perform and find yourself as well. We're going to move on to Albert. Albert, is it something that resonates with you?
Parts and parts. But with me, I think it started from my creation. I'm born of a woman and a man. So within finding myself, hence I said parts, I realized that I'm created of a man and a woman. So I embrace both these worlds. So when people say I'm gay and whatnot, I'm not really gay. I'm both a man and a woman. And I usually say I'm a womanly god. But my art is heavily influenced by where I come from and where I was raised. It's influenced by my upbringing from the southwestern townships of Johannesburg and the beautiful scenery, but also the sad scenery that surrounds it. I'm born and I create of my history and where I am now. And then in my process of growing and trying to discover myself, then the spirit world also comes into context. Hence, I'm now a Sangoma, a shaman in layman terms. I'm not a witch doctor. I don't understand how you can have a witch and a doctor at the same time. So I'm a Sangoma. And all these worlds, together with what I identify as a woman, as a man, that's where my creativity springs from. I pay homage to my Asian guides, my ancestors. I pay homage to the voiceless, which is queer people, women and children. Yeah, that's where I come from, and that's what I bring into the world. Whatever I see, whatever I interpret, I have to vomit it out and create work. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Albert. You said something interesting about spirituality and environment, and paying homage to this. To these people and beings, beyond you and with you and perhaps after you within your environment. And you're a free spirit, which is very interesting. And it brings me to MoMo, right? MoMo, you work in the institutional space of, academia, and then you're arts director and a script writer, and then there's this form and all this formula. How does that resonate with you?
So I come from a family of artists, and I knew very young, at about 6 years old, that, okay, I like this feeling of being on stage and putting on this clothing and becoming or playing something else. So, but I was also always very interested in child psychology. I always thought, my family will tell you, I'd always say to them, I want to be a child psychologist. I want to help children. But I think largely because my grandmother was a nurse. And so the idea of helping others or being present in other spaces where you can offer yourself and service. She'd take me often to like squatter camps, and we'd each have to take a couple of items from our wardrobes and give them away. So I always understood that there's something in giving without necessarily getting anything back that might be good for the rest of the world. I grew up drawing. I grew up writing poetry, watching a lot of stand-up comedy and a lot of films. And I think as I slowly became more firm in my voice, I think being able to work with children, so I didn't get my psychology degree, but I managed to find myself in an institution where I was able to teach. I love it. It's another huge passion of mine. I think one that is maybe even more gratifying than being on stage and performing for people. My grandmother obviously was born in 42, so she and my father and aunt grew up in apartheid. So I was also raised on a lot of Afrocentric films, politicized films. And I knew very young that there were certain ways that, or words I couldn't speak that maybe in that moment perpetuated Afrophobia, or, you know, and my aunt was very clear, like, you cannot use that word, like, you just cannot call people that, you know, and I had to learn very young that, like, oh, okay, we are one, and that just because someone is from Ghana and I'm from this side of the border, it doesn't mean that we are literally not experiencing the same challenges. You know, so quickly learning about transnationalism and how that's affected the Black skin. So my narrative, and because I was raised by my grandmother, is largely a female-centered narrative, but also a queer one. I went to my first Pride, I think I was 9 years old. I kissed my first girl at 12. I've been in relationships with women. I've been in relationships with men. If I could, I'd marry all of them. So I think my work is largely influenced by this myriad of my background. And of course, my grandmother also went into lecturing. So I think that teaching bone, we have a lot of teachers in my family too. So I'm fortunate, I guess, that I was able to branch out and actually express myself in the ways that I always knew I could, outside of just being a performer, which has influenced the work that I write as well. So I was able to write my own work. When I felt the urgency to speak about something, I then was like, wait a minute, I don't have to wait to be cast in something to talk about this. I can just create it myself. So it's a lovely space to be in, that point of intersectionality and being able to flip scripts and be on either side of the page. So that's fun.
Thanks so much, Momo. I mean, from Lisa and Albert and Momo, we hear, like, you know, the good fortune of environment and family and space and opportunities, you know, background, and having access to, you know, this good affirming environment that we can thrive and grow and become ourselves. And it is true that, you know, the Momo spoke of transnationalism. The experiences are the same, right? Even in spite of, you know, the good fortune, there is still the shadow of pain and violence and all of that. And it's more so stark in countries that, you know, that still have overarching laws and, you know, legal regimes. Countries like Kenya, Nigeria. I mean, Franceska and Ayo. I mean, Franceska first. How does all of this resonate with you as someone who lives in a country with a more stark, you know, anti-queer legal regime? Franceska.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, for your question. And I'll start by saying, yes, we are all shaped by our different circumstances depending on where we come from. And I'll start by saying I relate to the words of the late Mama Winnie Mandela when she said, I'm the product of the masses of my country and the product of my enemy. So for me, where I'm coming from, I'm growing up in a very conservative and a very religious society that keeps on telling me and questioning, why are you not conforming to that? And I became aware of all this even when I didn't have the language or even I knew how and what was happening around. Then I'm growing up and coming into terms that I'm in a country where if you don't conform to the heteronormativity, then we don't have a protection by law or policies. Then I come aware that there is existence of Section 162, 165 that criminalizing same-sex conduct between two consenting adults. So as this goes on, I have to now start asking myself, what can I do to start pushing back against all these issues? And then I'm moving from Nairobi, from the village, and then I came to Nairobi, and I found a very vibrant, organized LGBTQ community that welcomed me, and finally I found a sense of belonging, and that's how I took that upon to also organize with other like-minded queer performance, and we started to use the art of performance like drag art to use it for a safe space and to push back against all these forces that dehumanize us, all these forces that tell us that, or try to erase us and tell us we should not exist. So that's how I became the person I am today, and I'm passionate about it, to continue doing that and choosing myself each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Franceska. It's very interesting and important what you said about choosing yourself and the community in spite of the limiting legal regime. And it brings me to Ayo. Ayo, you are part of the queer community as an organizer, as an ally, who works in the field in Nigeria and here in South Africa. I mean, how did you come on board? Amidst the stigma that would eventually attach to allies such as yourself. What made Ayo Sohumo?
Thank you very much, David. And listening to everyone here, I almost feel like my own role here is so prosaic. Like everybody has this beautiful, poetic, and highly inspirational story to say. But mine is almost so rum-drum and nothing anybody's going to be so excited about. But what I would say is I would borrow off Franceska's own quote, about being a product of the enemy. Right from an early age, I've always been somebody who uses words as a means of expressing my own anger, my own frustrations at social issues. I remember very correctly when I was in high school, I wrote, we had this like social club in the school, which usually ranked people every week according to some kind of popularity measurement. And they will say something like, oh, the best dressed student, the worst dressed student, the cleanest student, the dirtiest student, and so on. And I really got upset by this. I wasn't, of course, one of the coolest kids, but so I wrote something and put it on the board, which basically criticizing that whole system of ranking students according to some kind of aesthetics. And everybody was upset by it because I was basically challenging what was accepted as an organized idea in the school. And then the principal called me into her office and she said, do you know that I am the patron of this club? I said, yes. Do you know that by insulting the club, you are insulting me? I said, I'm not sure I see the correlation, but I guess. And then next thing, she asked me to lie down on the floor and she gave me, I think, about 12 lashes of the cane right there and then. And I think I was more bemused than anything else that, wow, I wrote an article and this moved the principal so much to the point that I was given physical corporeal punishment. So I felt like maybe there is something to this writing of the thing. And that has followed me through my life up to my adult life. And so while I was writing on a lot of social ills in Nigeria, the idea of writing around queer issues did not really come immediately until when Nigeria decided to pass legislation on the prohibition of same-sex marriage in name, but really about the prohibition of queer identity broadly. And I was expecting people to stand up and say, this is wrong, this is overstretching the limits of state power, this is a deep breach into people's lives. But not everybody actually kind of applauded, including the Bar Association, that I considered to be, at the time, a representative of the people's rights, a safeguard for the people's rights. The Bar Association clapped for it, the churches clapped for it. And so I wrote this article called The Straight Nigerian's Guide, to the Anti-Gay Law, which is basically saying, okay, fine, you may not care about what happens with queer people, but these are the ways in which it diminishes all of us together. It breaks down society, and it could affect you too in ways you have not seen coming. And there was like this uproar on social media with this person writing about, queer things. This was around 2012 now. And, there wasn't this much visibility or publicity or even media narratives around queer identity in Nigeria, because a lot of people who really were living through this experience could not come out and speak for themselves. They were mostly underground, and they were mostly in the closet, and there wasn't the kind of social media space we have today, where a lot of people could not express themselves freely. And so I did that. Then I followed it up with another article, what you should know about Nigeria's anti-gay law, which also went viral. But I think people were mostly tickled by just the idea that somebody is even writing about gay issues as such. But what I learned from all that, and which then eventually shaped the kind of advocacy that I've engaged in, is that we could write policy papers, we could do strategic litigation, we could do petitions and all of that. But what really gets people moving is often the stories we tell. It's often pop culture, the way in which we shape narratives through media, through art, and through just general cultural iconography. And so even as a NGO worker over the last 8 to 10 years now, I've been working with the media, or working in media spaces, using media to tell stories, to shape narratives, to basically capture or help people capture the sense of what it means to be a queer person. Of course, I'm not a performer, I'm a writer, but the whole idea, I suppose, is still coming from that same sense of, frustration at existing social ills and wanting to do something in a meaningful way outside the legal formal system that advocates tend to use broadly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayo. I mean, you're birthing nicely to the word meaningful, right? A meaningful way we can do things. We can shift narratives. We can, challenge the coloniality of how things have been. And this brings me to, the next question. Our work, right? The things that we do, what we do. How have we been able to, in our spaces, how have we been able to make them meaningful, use them, and how lucky have we been in accessing these spaces and getting to places, from moving underground to visibility, accessibility of people's attention, the space that should matter. How have we done that? I think we begin with Lisa, the Netherlands and European context.
Yeah, so well, firstly, I can also react a little bit on what everybody said, because I was thinking that I didn't really mention any of the shadow side over here, which, I mean, it's very, very different. I live in a country where I am able to express this side of myself and not feel unsafe, but I also did have some physical assault in my first performances. And I think actually what surprised me the most was how afraid people were of a non-binary identity, not so much that something that doesn't fit one way or the other can seem quite threatening to people. But yeah, in answer to your question about making space, maybe the best thing I can offer is to do with music and the way that music can create space. And that's something I thought about this question, about how the power of words are often reinforced when they're repeated or when they're set to music, and it can make those meanings more powerful if there's space for them to be repeated. So in my songs, a lot, there are only a couple of sentences in the whole song, and we just together repeat them over and over again, which again is like related to shamanic practice, or like had experience with Celtic shamanism also. And there's something about the repeating of the texts which brings a new meaning each time. So I think sometimes in songs that I write, I'm looking for something that I don't understand, and then I want to sing it over and over again until collectively we can find some kind of meaning together, just in yeah, so to give time by using music to give time to think about something instead of it needing to be always in the moment. I think that's how I try to make space. That's what I can mostly say to that.
That's very good. Using music, using art to buy time, create opportunity to, reflect or make meaning of what's going on. That's very good. I've not heard that before. That's very good. Speaking of buying time and creating space to do internal work, all of that, we moved to South Africa, right? I think my life experience with South Africa was the novel, or The Place He Sees Where Bazi Is Dead, right, by Arthur Fugard, where he talks about the different spacing where where people of the Black race live in a certain place, and white live in a certain place, and they didn't have access to certain spaces past certain times, right? And I mean, that was the reality of apartheid, and a very large extent still, recurring today because of class. How does that affect your performances, your work, Albert? How does that affect your work and your access to spaces?
Thank you for that question. So I think my journey as a practitioner has been quite interesting and a bit controversial and a bit crazy in that it's really not easy to access spaces within my country, South Africa. Or maybe I should say, it's not easy to access spaces as the artist that I am. I left South Africa and had a huge career abroad. And I've been working there for the past 8 years. And I've been in and out of South Africa. And in my in and out of South Africa, I've been trying to get into different spaces. But then, of course, it's only alternative spaces that will put on my works, And these alternative spaces are usually in town. They're usually inaccessible to my people. And it was only for the first time last year, at the end of it, that I could actually perform in the township that I'm from, where people have never seen my works. I think we deal a lot with gatekeepers. We deal a lot with certain spaces with their conventions. We dealing with homophobia, we dealing with at times Afrophobia. So for some it's easy, for some it isn't. And then of course we get to a point where there's something that people always say to me, and I can't take it in any way, but for me it's an insult. And I have a lot of people coming to me and saying, you're way ahead of your time. I hate that statement because for me it says that I'm not here. My own people can't hear me, and I only have to leave this country to be heard. And it's an unfortunate thing, and it's recurring and it's growing. Spaces are, you have conventional spaces like a theater. I can't perform my work in a theater. Well, in certain theaters, I've always worked in galleries. I've always put up my work in run-down buildings and made art out of that. But then I guess with me, I've always created from a point of damage and a point of sadness and a point of being hurt, of being emancipated. And I embrace that side of life, and I embrace that within me and within my art. And it's the one thing that actually keeps me going. As a Black South African in South Africa, so many years after democracy, my existence is still to fight. I still have to fight. It doesn't end. And it's weird. but the fight continues. And I keep on just creating my work, and I find spaces. I think I positioned myself in a situation where I can't beat myself because of how the world sees me, of how the world is. I just have to push on, you know? So that's how I work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Albert. Thank you so much. And you speak of rejection and resistance of your work in spaces that should ordinarily accept you because you belong, right? You belong here. This is your home. Moving on to MoMo, you're South African as well. I mean, what's your experience? What's your experience with this?
So for me, I mean, it's weird how it's very similar to Albert, but I know the thing that gets me to travel is my voice. And after graduating, I think we realized very quickly that the idea of having studied performance and then getting an agent and then getting into the industry, that's an entire fallacy. And that's like, oh, that's someone else's dream. And it kind of went that way for them. But like literally for the majority of us, that's not how it goes. And so I knew very early on, after graduating from this, that I'm going to go the independent route. And so 3 other friends of mine and myself created a sketch comedy group called Thanks. And we basically used it to speak back to socio-political and economic issues that were affecting us. First one of them being access, not having access to the mainstream theaters, not having, where do we get the money, being rejected for funding and all of that, but not being told why, not understanding how things work. So we forged ourselves into, at the time, there was a space called The Platform, and it was one of the newer independent spaces that provided us with a, not even a theater, it's a space-like space, I guess, if that makes sense, where we get to explore, dress it, redress it, and all of that. And so as Thanks grew, we used that to speak back. And we gained I don't know if it's a popularity, but we were known for being those people who are going to say the thing that you're thinking, whether it's to the government, to institutions of power. Sometimes they'd be in the audiences, and sometimes when we knew that they were coming, we'd risk it even more. So it was always about just like going out there on a limb. And so I saw that as a pattern that like, okay, I'm not getting cast in shows. I'm not the girl who's getting the work. And so even as we diversified into our different areas, I continued to be forced into a space of independent producing, constantly rehearsing in a community hall. I mean, a play like Tau, which went on to win about 7 awards. We started rehearsing in a community space, community theater space. Next door, grannies are getting paid pension, taxi drivers are meeting in the other room, you know, like creating art under those circumstances, because to pay for space at a conventional theater is about, you know, it was too expensive. It's 2,000 rands a week or something like that. We don't have that kind of money. That 2,000 rands is going into making sure your cast is getting food, because you can't pay this. So people are getting paid by food and by transport money, because the dream is if we can enter this festival and then we'll get an opportunity to play at a mainstream theater. Have you seen Zandile? Same thing, rehearsing in a garage, you know, where the 3 of us are just like, all we have is a dream. And I saw this narrative continuously playing itself out in my life. Until such a time after I did one of the local films, with that money, I then started my own production company. And so I was like, if I'm going to do this independent thing, let me have a name for it, because it makes no sense to have produced or made so many shows live, but there's nothing to it that says I was a part of that, right? So I thought, let me just go that route. But it is very challenging. Like Albert mentioned, the gatekeepers were a huge thing. And again, because I was very young and very, you will not tell me anything, Keda, you know. I fought for a lot of what I believed in, you know, and like I said, because my work is largely influenced by the politicization of my family, there's no way that the work that I do won't have that palette of thoughts or ideologies. So it's a common theme with all the work that I've done. So it did keep me out of certain spaces. There were places where erasure was becoming an issue, where my name was not mentioned in things I've done, and being literally erased as if you were never there, you know, and because of my voice. So it's a price one has to pay, but you wonder if it's worth it. Like Albert is saying, am I really ahead of time, or are you guys just behind? You know, when are we going to catch up? When are we going to be okay with people saying what they want to say, and us actually just having the open discussion, and without it taking anything away from me, you know, as the gatekeeper? But there's power struggles that we're dealing with, men wanting sex in exchange for you being a part of a particular production. And those are things I vehemently spoke against, and things I rejected entirely because I know my capabilities. So these are some of the things that were challenging to us. But I guess we're products of our struggles, but like also ultimately certain things shouldn't be so difficult, you know? Yeah.
Thanks so much, MoMo. You speak of erasure and breaking out, you know, struggling and fighting and finally coming to your own, you know, disrupting things a lot, right? I'm going to Kenya and Nigeria, right, where it's, you know, not just the culture of the industry or this or the social space. It's, you know, it's everyone, it's everything. What's your experience, Franceska? I mean, what's your experience with spaces?
Okay, thank you, David. I want to start by picking up what Albert was talking about, being told that he's ahead of the time, and this is something I can relate to, because when I'm introducing my art, I'm introducing myself to different people in contexts. For example, in the most developed countries, this is something that usually constantly you hear people tell me, like, drag art is not the same for us. Can I give an example of South Africa or Mozambique? And then hearing others saying they are also facing some challenges, it's not something that you can take for lightly. So to answer your question, in Kenya, accessing spaces is a general and conforming force, and as a community of LGBTQ people, this is a community for ones that usually push to the margin, and navigating through a way to access these spaces. It's not something that is simple, because we are confronting erasure, and therefore remaining visible and choosing to defy all odds that we face constantly is something that has shaped. And as my colleague said, we are shaped by our struggle. And according to, or in respect to my context, we use our community centers for most of our art, because the mainstream art does not support. I mean, the mainstream is mostly so binary, and accessing such meeting spaces as a non-binary person or a gender non-conforming person, as a trans performing artist is not easy. So we have to own our spaces. And also, when we are coming to the spaces, we have to be very careful, because we have to invite, and when you are planning, you have to invite people who we know, community or allies, for the sake of our security. Another challenge has always been the limited of resources, because especially the current situation of the pandemic really made things even worse, because we had just begun this at, like, 2019 was a peak point for us, and then coming to 2020 and what happened, it was really something that we pushed us back, and we are currently feeling like we have went back to like 5 years ago, and But our resilience has made us to be where we are, because for me, ambition and resilience never sleep, and that's what keeps me going in my community, who can relate to these kind of struggles of accessing spaces in a country that does not have policies that support us. Take, for example, the heterosexual people who are performing art. They don't have any policy protection in Kenya. So you can imagine, as an LGBTQ person coming and trying to reach for government support in terms of supporting your art is not something that we can say looks made. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for sharing, Franceska. Well, often feels like one is an island amidst all the pressure surrounding, and is it your time? I mean, why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? Ayo, please tell us about Nigeria and your experience, in civil society space as someone who constantly needs to get into these spaces.
So I suppose on this question, I feel a little bit of camaraderie or a sense of familiarity with what everybody else has been saying, which is funny because for me, when I first came to South Africa, I've been living continuously in South Africa since 2017. I felt like, oh, this is such a very free environment. LGBT people can have performance. My very first LGBT performance, I watched it in South Africa, stage play and all of that. Which then brings me back to Nigeria, because in 2014, we had a production of a documentary at the organization I was working for at the time, the Initiative for Equal Rights, Veil of Silence. We couldn't screen it in Nigeria. We had to go to the UK to do a public screening of the documentary, and which itself was so, in a sense, almost humiliating, sometimes, because I remember I was denied a visa on the premise that I was running away from Nigeria or something like that, and I couldn't come to the UK. And I'm like, if not for Nigeria being Nigeria, why would I want to go to the UK to go and help screen a documentary? But yeah, that's what it was at the time. 2 years afterwards, we did a short film. That one was screened in Nigeria, but it was screened at the German embassy in Nigeria, which also, legally is still like a foreign country still. But that was the kind of, or those were the kind of measures that had to be taken in those early stages where there was no space at all. And I would say that LGBTQ people in Nigeria suffer 2 levels of exclusion. There is, first of all, the general social exclusion that most Nigerians face by virtue of us having a highly elitist, classist society, where there's a small political elite that basically call the shots around every aspect of society, including media spaces. And so if you are ordinarily a critic of the government or a critic of existing social systems, you're unlikely to get that much of a hearing, generally speaking. Now, if your critique then goes to the second level of being, counter hegemony, it doesn't align with established norms of that society, then you are now excluded not just by the political elite, but even by the everyday people around you, people who ordinarily should share your struggles, people who ordinarily should understand the idea of being oppressed, also turn against you. So you are now fighting on 2 levels. You are fighting the system, and then you are fighting the people who are also suffering under the same system. And so there was no spaces at all for the expression of queer identity in Nigeria up until about 2015, 2016. And I have to give credit to the people at the Initiative for Equal Rights in Nigeria at the time, who the work we did at that time helped to channel, that we basically broke the space ourselves. Like we practically pushed forcefully, like, no, we are going to be seen and we are going to put representation out. We will stop hiding in the shadows, And in that way, we were able to create allies in the actual media, mainstream media. We're also able to, in a sense, instill confidence in closeted but influential people who are also working in different spaces. So, for example, after we screened that short film at the German embassy, we then took it to a private cinema where we were like, we are going to invite people privately to come and do a screening. And then we invited people in the media to also come and watch this movie. And at the end of the movie, I recall one of the media news editors was she was so affected by what she had just watched, because we are not presenting a sub-story, so to say. We're not like, oh, gay people are dying, help us or anything. We're just telling a story of a regular person who is just gay, but yeah, I mean, everybody's a regular person just living and surviving in this country. And she was like, oh, I never seen it that way, because the imagery of being gay at that time was the stereotype that mostly came from Hollywood, of, you know, strip clubs and leather pants and whips. And so that was the only idea that everybody in Nigeria had of what it means to be gay. But they're like, yeah, that's just one subset, just like being straight, so it's just one subset. There are straight people with kinks, and there are straight people who are just boring. And it's the same thing. There are gay people with kinks, and there are gay people who are boring. So she was like, oh, God, mind blown. And she was like, can you come and write more about this in our paper? And so she gave us a column in the newspaper, Mainstream National Daily, like, write about this here. And the same thing, eventually they had this whole, for the first time in Nigeria, a whole weekend cover edition around gay Nigeria with big, bold, beautiful rainbow colors on the front page and all of that. And, you know, it was well received by most educated people, at least in the country. And so that, for me, was the kind of struggle that we had to go through. Fortunately, the internet came to the rescue. YouTube, you know, media, using YouTube, using Instagram, using Twitter, all of this helped to give us more control over the access to space, which traditional mass media did not allow at the time. And I think now it's almost become, you know, ordinary, in fact, that, oh, gay people have their own shows, their own this thing, it's all over YouTube. If you want to watch it, you can watch it, and so on and so forth. Nobody is, I mean, we still don't have presence in traditional media. I don't think anybody cares that much about traditional media these days. But yeah, so that for me has been how we have to go through. It's still not, of course, perfect. The idea would be to get to a point where nobody is really segregated, or you don't need to go find your own space separately, or you need, like, it's just going to be normal kind of media engagement without trying to delineate which one is gay media, which one is straight media. But for now, at least, I can say that through the use of the internet, we've been able to create that and carve out that space for ourselves in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Ayo, for that. I mean, that's some good insight on Nigeria and the struggles, and some of the struggles there. And I think one thing that I picked up from our conversation is that, you know, the trouble of access to spaces for, you know, for us as performers, as people of the arts. It's not just our problem. It also hinders the access of the community to us, right? And when that divide is there, when that hindrance is there, the work cannot move forward. You know, allies cannot be found, communities cannot be built, right? But then we still move on in spite of that. We still forge ahead. We still disrupt and break the rules and make things happen. And it brings me to the question, why? Why do we still move forward and forge ahead? Why do we do what we do? Right, and I want to ask, I want us to cast our mind back to, I don't know how common this is, but there has to be, or there's usually one moment in our performance or in our lives where something happens that reminds us, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Could we share that experience? That's one moment. What happened then? Lisa, please.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things for me was handing the microphone to the audience. I had one performance where I gave the microphone away, and then could see what happened if people want to sing along with me or something, and that started to create a like much more like a big feeling of openness in the room. Something that I find quite a problem here is apathy. Like I'm quite often asked to perform, but then they want me to perform in the bar where where the wealthy patrons are drinking wine and getting drunk or something, and no one really. And when I say no, I really need a space where people, then it can be quiet so the unexpected can happen, and people really don't understand that might be needed. And I feel like apathy and the kind of consumption of art is like a really big problem here. Like that's the kind of gatekeeping that happens in the Netherlands anyway. It's a kind of apathy or so I had some experience during the lockdowns in the last year where I was given opportunity and then sort of tried to rebelliously divide the opportunity into like a bigger or get more artists together to create something collaboratively, because the people above couldn't see that that's actually what was necessary at this time, that it would be more meaningful for people to come together to create something than it would be to make again one artwork for the same audience. So I also love to hear, MoMo, about your experiences setting up your space from the ground up, because it's really seen as going against the system to go and create your own space, even though it's actually quite easy to do here. Yeah, for me, handing over the microphone was a big moment, and giving my voice away was a big moment. And I want to do it again. There's no gigs, there's no concerts, so I can't do it again. But I'd really want to do that again.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks so much. Albert, when was your aha moment?
Aha moment. For me, firstly, I never consider my work my own. I don't take full credit of it, because I believe, because I'm a vessel, my work is given to me by my Asian guides. So as much as my voice is in there, it is also given to me, which for me is the one true beautiful thing that I have, my connection with the spiritual realm. I think the person who gave me my aha moment was Fela Kuti saying, music is a weapon. And I took that because I understood exactly what you were saying. And I believe art is a weapon to strike, a weapon to bring about change, a weapon to reconstruct. And I think that's why I do this. I understand that at times it's not easy for people to take in my art, because it can really get quite deep, but the one thing I really enjoy, artistry is life itself, and to be able to take people on different journeys with your work, whether it's music, whether you're on stage, whether you're acting, whether you've written a script, let alone a book. It is the most humbling feeling having those responses when a person actually relates to you, when a person says, you've inspired me, you've changed my life, you've made me notice this about myself. Those are things that I really hold to my chest and my heart. But also I think for me, I really wanted to break down institutions, This is why I do this work. I want to break down institutions because institutions influence how people see the world, how people interpret. So I want to break those barriers. Like I said, my existence is about fighting. I have to fight to get through to the next person. And if my art can help me with that, then I go with it. But yeah, art is life itself. It helps me breathe. It's a calling. It's a gift. I think more than anything, because I grew up as a loner. So as a loner, I could do a lot of things by myself, like having an incredible imagination, and writing from a very young age, to embrace your own craziness, you know, what other people don't see, what other people don't perceive as beautiful. Those are the kind of things that give me life and give my work life, you know. So I think definitely for me, I do it because it helps me continue breathing. It helps me live. But I always say, if one person has been touched or has been moved in an audience of 100 or 50 people, I've done my job. I can sleep better at night. That's me.
Okay, we're going to go to MoMo now. MoMo, tell us about that moment when you realized that this was it. I mean, there's no going forward. This is where you pitch your tent with your work and your mission and your vision.
I think one of the painful tragedies about being an artist, and maybe perhaps being an artist that isn't seeking to just be famous, is having to live with a certain tragic acceptance of that there are certain things that you're just not going to get because of how the world is literally set up. And as a result, though, I found myself, I'm very proud of every single piece of work that I've ever done. I can own it. I can own my voice in it. I'm, you know, I once had a conversation with my gran, and I tried to tell her I was dating a woman in about, 2009. And she just refused to have a conversation. And it's okay, I understood. She was born in 42, so, and then I think it was a year before last, I was in a show called No Easter Sundays for Queers. And I finally was like, oh my God, yes, my gran is finally going to see me playing this lesbian, and hopefully this will spark a conversation between us. And I'll be able to finally share that, like, you do know that, I too am into women. And she came with like her nurse friends, and they were all there sharing in their crutches, watching this show. And I realized that she wasn't ready to quite have the big conversation, but they had a conversation about the tragedy of having a young woman die at the hands of, purely because of her sexuality. And I was so proud of her in that moment. I was so proud of her making the other grannies see the whole point of the play, and that it didn't matter to me that my gran knows or not that I'm attracted to women. But the fact that in that moment, her mind understood the importance of that play. And had it not been for that particular performance or me being in it, because she obviously came to see her granddaughter, she had no clue what the play was going to be about. But for the mere fact that she witnessed that and encouraged a conversation within her peers, I was so happy. I was like, she doesn't even need to know, because from a human perspective, she understands right and wrong. And as an independent artist, I think that's given me a lot of joy. I might be hungry, but I'm happy. I remember with Tau, because that's a play about these two gentlemen who are undergoing a ritual into manhood. This is before Ingleva, and these boys, end up falling in love while on the mountain. And I remember the play performing in Bloemfontein, which is overly populated with a lot of Basutu. And this is a very Basutu culture or ritual. amongst others. I know the Xhosa people have it as well. But I think as an independent artist, it's awesome to be able to own your narrative. It's awesome to be able to transcend in spaces as well. I also realized, just like Albert, that when we leave South Africa, we are more accepted and more celebrated as artists who might follow a narrative that is not mainstream. So I'm very proud of it. I don't know how we rate the success of our work. I love Q&As. I love the mic being passed around in the audience, hearing what people have to say, people speaking back to the work, changing mindsets, fathers coming in and saying, oh my God, in your play and learn, I didn't know that catcalling is a part of rape culture, or things like that. So to be able to spark these critical conversations is very important to me. And I think the idea of being a superstar has become less and less a goal. And I think when you understand what the role of art is, and that in an age of TikTok, anyone really can be an artist, but people are inspired by different things, but that our voices still matter. Art is important, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And if it weren't for art, society wouldn't even be able to see themselves differently. So it's because of people like ourselves, whether we're writers or musicians, playwrights and actors, that we're able to put out seeds of continuous thought processes. And like Albert says, the more these works are reported in academia, the more we begin to dismantle the white, patriarchal, Western mainstream way of thinking, and we begin to engage in a more literal African decolonized way of understanding ourselves and our history in relation to how we are evolving as a people.
Thank you so much, Momo. Thanks so much. Art matters, our work matters. Franceska and Ayo, speaking from the context of, places where there is a challenge, resistance constantly from law, from society. With ask you to do two things in your comments. Just speak to the idea of when was it, when did it become worth it, and what is your advice for people, for people like you in your context who have to do what you do, or who have to do similar things to make human rights or to make arts work the way you do? Please, Franceska first, then Aya.
Thank you so much, David. What I would say is that as artists, we should always embrace being or taking charge of our duties, and as an artist to always reflect the time and to appreciate and to embrace resilience, because that's what has kept us going here. Because when you're faced with when you're confronting forces of that dehumanize you every day in Kenya and many other contexts that can reach that in Africa, you can't help but remain relevant as an artist. And I will give an example, like in 2019 when we had the ruling that we were not expecting, because of the years the LGBTQ plus people organizing in Kenya spent a lot of resources towards making and to see a day where this section will be done away and bring that decree case. So that time when the ruling came, we were so frustrated. And I remember 2 weeks after that, we had a very big performance where we were infusing we took our art to another level, where we were infusing it within recognizing our freedom fighters icons and taking up those roles in characters and bringing them on stage to infuse drag art that has been mainly seen as a foreign or Western kind of art. We're able to bring it in Kenya on stage and to honor freedom fighters. And this happened when we had just received such kind of a ruling. So we made it a celebration of our queerness. That was rooting us in what we believe in and taking up that space to affirm ourselves in our identities and our expressions. And that was so affirming, and it took us to another level that made us to continue pushing, because the fight is not yet over. To fight against all forms of repression that we keep on facing each and every day, from eviction, arbitrary arrest, all these forms of oppression that you can imagine. And I'll repeat again, choosing ourselves and choosing myself each and every day is not somewhere I arrive. It's something that I practice every day, and I will further to and challenge each and every one of us to embrace that, and it will do a great deal to you in terms of your well-being and health and mental health. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much, Franceska. Ayo.
Thank you very much for sharing inspiring stories. You know, I'm not gonna lie. In 2012, when I wrote my first public article around, you know, the oppression and discrimination around queer identity in Nigeria, I thought this was just going to be like a 1 year or 2 year thing. You know, we'll talk, we'll protest, the government will say we are sorry, and they'll repeal the law, and everybody go back to their anti-gay life, something like that. I was a young man writing in a law firm, doing work around mergers and acquisitions, corporate law, banking, etc. So the whole idea of advocacy wasn't even on my plate. I wasn't even thinking around that. So, and but somehow, after 2 years of still screaming the same things, or 2 years of still writing the same things, arguing the same arguments, debating the same issues, a part of it began to realize that this might actually be a lifetime thing, not not a 1 or 2 year venture. And that's when I told myself that, well, there is clearly, you know, I have to do something more now. I can't just continue being a banking lawyer while talking about LGBT issues on the side. You know, I have to make a conscious choice. And if you grow up in Nigeria, if you're schooled in Nigeria, worked in Nigeria your life, it's usually hard for you to get or to understand issues around the intersection or queer theory or even critical legal theory, like the big issues that inform and shape how advocacy progresses are not things that you are taught in school. They are not things that you come across naturally. You know, we do not have that kind of progressive society at all. And somehow I begin to come into contact with some of these issues little by little. And by 2014, I had to tell myself that, look, dude, you have to make a firm choice now. Are you going to continue on a fast track path towards partnership in a major law firm? Or are you going to go and focus on the things that really matter to you? And in 2015, I handed my resignation letter to my bosses. I said, I'm off. They're like, oh, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to sit at home and think about life. and I called the people at TS and I said, okay, I'm available full-time now, not the part-time thing I was doing. And they're like, yeah, you're welcome. We don't have any money to pay you. I said, it's fine. Yeah, I'll survive on my savings, which I did for 2 years. And somehow, I mean, here I still am, still doing the work, still being part of the community in the ways in which I can be. So I can't say it's a particular moment when it was clear to me. It was just this series of little frustrations. And then one day you are like, okay, fine, I'm going to be committed to this permanently now. And so far, I still have been. Thanks.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing such wonderful, inspiring stories. I'm going to take final words from Lisa and Albert and MoMo, Franceska and Ayo. Final words to inspire, people who work in your path, people who are coming behind you, words to affirm them from experience. Yeah. Lisa, please.
Yeah, for me, it's just been really powerful to be here and to share in all of your journeys and how, to share in your strength, actually. I consider myself to be quite seeking that strength in my life in different ways. And so for me to be around others who are actively strong every time they wake up, as you said, Franceska, is really, really inspiring for me. And I hope for others too who are listening. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lisa. Albert?
Firstly, I think we all should be friends. Like, I think I should have all of you on speed dial. I think let's invite each other on all social media platforms. But lastly, from me, live your life, live your truth, keep on fighting, don't give up the fight. You all are beautiful. Thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful, and I'm quite blessed actually, hearing all of you guys and all your testimonies and your lives and your beauty in its ugliness, in its sadness, in its happiness. So I really thank all of you. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you so much, Albert. Franceska? Momo, sorry.
So I just want to say our National Arts Council stole millions of money. So to every single artist who made it through without getting a stipend of being alive or being able to eat, kudos to us, okay? And to every artist that is aspiring, young ones as well, I think we've also learned through Corona that we need more, we need a physical thing that we can also barter and trade to add wealth and value to the things that we also do. Art is amazing, but sometimes we can't eat and applause. So let's also be smarter about some of the ways in which we create, but art is vital. Without art, they say the world has no heart. It's air, it's HD. So we need art, so let's all keep arting. I agree with Albert after this. Please, let's all link up. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was amazing. And to many more to the ARTFLUENCE. I know this was your inaugural one, so thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Momo. Franceska, any final words?
So finally, I would say that to each and every one of you, I was so happy to engage with you in this conversation. And I will leave you with these words. You should always, and don't let anybody, at any time, tell you you're not, that your art has not impacted change. This platform has proven that, and it has shown to the world that this is the kind of art that whose time has come. And if your art has touched different hearts, and if you have held someone's hand along the way, and you can see a difference from where you started, then you should consider yourself as part of the art that whose time has come. So I'll have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Franceska. Ayo, any final words?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm just honored to be here, really, because while I enjoy writing, researching, and teaching, especially around the legal aspects of SOGI issues in Africa, I almost try to stay out of issues around experience and one's journey, because I feel like my own experiences and journey, while it might have been born out of frustration, does not and has not been reflective or cannot reflect the real pain and anguish that the queer community actually faces and experiences. So I just try to stay away from discussion around experiences and all of that. But nevertheless, this discussion today has helped to encourage especially those who could be more allies, more openly allies out there, or even queer people who are in the closet and do not feel like I'm ready to, especially in Nigeria and the part of Africa where I come from, who feel a little bit bold about coming out and stepping into their identity. Then I'm happy to have contributed to that process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aya. Thank you so much, Elisa, Franceska, Momo, Albert. Thank you so much. It's been an incredibly inspiring evening. Thank you so much to the ARTFLUENCE Human Rights Festival team. And we wish all the viewers a wonderful evening. Good night.